So today we are going to welcome our second honorary survivor for the Stoughton-McFarland-Oregon Relay for Life event, Mark Paltzer. And Mark is a pharmacist at the Oregon Walgreens. So I am going to have him tell a little bit about himself, please.
I've been in Oregon for 23 years now. I have a wife, 2 kids, and a dog, and we've been here. I've worked at the Walgreens in Oregon for the last 10 years, and so we've been around for a while, and really like the area.
Excellent, very good. Well, thank you for being one of our honorary survivors. It's always so interesting for us to learn the background of different people who have gone through cancer, and I think the messages that our honorary survivors have give inspiration to people who may have just heard those words, "You have cancer," or they may be hearing that, or have a loved one who's gone through that. So, do you mind just sharing a little bit about how you discovered that you had cancer and a little bit about that story?
Sure. I was 33 years old, and I had found a little lump in the thigh muscle. After it didn't go away for a few weeks, I talked to my doctor, my regular doctor, about it, and went in, and he didn't think it was probably anything to worry about, but sent me to a surgeon to have it removed and biopsied. And when she looked at it, she didn't share his view of the not to be concerned about. She was pretty sure it was cancer, and I think within a week it was removed, and found out right away that it was lymphoma. It was fortunately the follicular lymphoma, which is a slower growing form of it. So that was on the plus side. Had a bunch of tests and procedures to see what stage and such it was, if it was other places and whatnot, and it seemed to be pretty isolated. So we did some radiation. That was pretty tolerable. I've always told people, if you have a choice of chemo and radiation, my pick is radiation, but that was just my experience, but it wasn't too bad. And continued working through that. Would just run down on, take a half hour off, run down to UW, get that and leave, and that. So that's kind of how things started out.
Yeah, and I know it's always hard when you first hear those words too, and they're giving you all these options of what you should have and so on. And I think that's one of the nice things about ACS is there's resources on the website and so forth. And so how long did your treatments take totally then?
The initial radiation, I think, was about 6 to 8 weeks, if I remember right. I was back in 99, so it was a while ago. And that went, so that was pretty smooth, pretty easy. I mean, you felt a little tired, but wasn't too bad. But then 6 months later, I found more lymph nodes that were enlarged. So then the consensus was to just wait, because they wasn't bad enough to recommend chemo yet at that point. So we did monitored it for the next 4 years until it kind of flared up again. And then at that time I had the R-CHOP, it's called, Rituxan plus the CHOP chemotherapy. And it responded really well to that. In fact, I think we were going to go I believe it was 6 to 8 rounds. But I think I only had 4, and it had responded really well. So at that point they said, we might as well stop now, and then did just Rituxan every 6 months for 2 years after that, which was pretty real. I mean, that's real tolerable. You don't have the side effects like you do with the chemo, with the nausea and the hair loss and all those fun things. And then since then, that's that was the last time I had any other treatment other than monitoring things.
And so do you have to go in like once a year, or what is your
Mhm.
kind of relationship now with monitoring it and so forth, and with the oncologist?
Yeah, it's pretty much if something comes up, I let them know. But otherwise, I go in once a year, get some lab work done. They usually will check. There's a few lymph nodes that are just kind of um, there, that you're bigger than they normally would be for the for somebody who doesn't have lymphoma, but are just kind of sitting there.
Okay.
So we just kind of monitor those, and really, really, the last 16 years really wouldn't even know anything was going on.
Really, isn't that something? So another part of your story is when you first discovered the cancer, you had quite young children at that time, correct?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, the like I say, the I went to my regular doctor didn't really think it was probably anything to worry about, so went to the surgeon, and in the pre-surgery appointments when she told me she was pretty sure it was cancer. And so yeah, my kids were 3 and 4 at the time, and uh, so that was, yeah, I would say from my experience, the initial phase of dealing with it, first there's a lot of surprise and
Yeah.
and wondering, what's going to happen. And then you have to sort through all the different treatment options and a lot of information. Now you do a lot of, research online,
Right.
and that's where there's some definitely good resources like the Cancer Society and such to look at for that kind of thing. And of course, get a second opinion and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
But
and we're
yeah,
very
that's
yeah, and we're very fortunate in this area too to have such good medical facilities close. As you mentioned, you could be working, run into Madison, have your treatment, come back, and so forth. And I think sometimes, we take that for granted, And one of the things about the American Cancer Society, they have rides to treatments too, because there are people who live farther away who may not have a family support system close by, and because of their treatments might not be able to drive and so forth. So that's, a
yeah.
part. Do you have any advice if someone is diagnosed with cancer and has a younger family, or maybe it's the child who's diagnosed, of how you helped your kids to kind of understand what was happening? And
Well, no, I guess I don't have good
okay.
advice. I mean, I think that's going to be a real
Yeah,
personal thing. It was, it
yeah,
was a difficult thing. You
right.
definitely think, am I going to see my kids graduate kindergarten? Am I
Yeah,
going to see my kids get through grade school? Will I see them play little league?
right.
Will I get to see them graduate from high school?
And you
All
had
those
a
kind of things.
milestone in the last year or two with your son, is that correct?
Yeah, my oldest son uh, got married last summer. Actually, it'll be a year ago on Sunday,
Oh, how neat.
and so yeah, that was, you
Yeah.
kind of think about it a little bit at those times when you're watching that happen, and you kind of go, boy, I wasn't sure I'd get to see this. So
Right, that's true. Yep. And I know there are a number of resources on their website too for, explaining cancer to children, or if a parent has a diagnosis, or a grandparent or loved one or a friend of theirs in school. So I know there are some good resources, because as you said, it's a very difficult thing, and it probably depends a lot on the family and the children and so forth, of how they handle it and so forth. But yeah, you had an
yeah,
amazing, journey and so forth. And every journey is unique, and I think knowing your own body is probably the most important. That you can tell if there's something that's not quite right, and that importance of follow up and getting second opinions and so forth. That
yeah, yeah. It's I would agree with that. Even though when I first uh, had the lump there, that's all it was. I felt perfectly fine. I wasn't having any symptoms of anything else. So it's probably easy kind of ignore that, but it is good to, better to get things checked out. As a pharmacist, I talk to people about um, cancer and such, and I've recommended people go get something checked out and such. Also, I try to use my experience with having had both radiation and chemo to be able to offer some advice, or at least um, letting them know that it's something that other people have gone through and that they'll get through it, and that. So.
And I think that's so important, because there's nothing like having advice from someone who's been through it themselves. That, for most of us who haven't, had that experience of having cancer ourselves, we can think, about things, and we can read about things and look at them. But when you actually have gone through it yourself, I think that experience, you give such credibility to, the advice that you give and sharing of your experience, and so on. Anything else that you'd like to share today as we celebrate our virtual Relay for Life? This is a little bit different this year. Normally we'd have Mark at our ceremony and speaking to the group, and an opportunity for people to visit with him afterwards and so forth. But it's a little bit different situation with COVID this year.
Yeah, I guess nothing really to add, just that, always, if you think something should be checked, by all means get it checked out, and that it's overwhelming to get that diagnosis, but you can use the resources and such to sort through things, and there's, they can do something for just about everything. So there's a path forward on from just about anywhere.
Yeah. And I think the neat thing about this year too, because you're a cancer survivor for how many years now again that you were diagnosed? How many?
Since 99.
Since 99. So between you and Sherry,
21 years ago.
Yep. So between you and Sherry Kress, who is our other honorary survivor, you have well over 50 years of survivorship. And I think that's just amazing. And I think that's such an important thing for volunteers and people that we work with and people who help support our event, to see, that people, have gone through this journey, and they've been successful in fighting and monitoring their cancer. And even if it's a type that may not be cured, that you still have to continue to monitor, that there's such a special feeling about that story. So thank you, Mark, for taking time to share your story and to be that example for other people as they, are supporting people. They're going through that themselves. They might have lost somebody to cancer, but it always is such a special part of the relay. So thank you so much for being our honorary survivor this year. And we'll look forward to having you hopefully in person at the event next year. We're hoping that 2021 gets us back to normal and so forth. But we will close our recording on this, and thank you to everyone for tuning into the story tonight.